Welcome back to the shop. Today I've got a Remington, it's a skeet, or clay pigeon, skeet clay, sporting clay, whatever you call them, thrower. My older brother Nick picked this up at a flea market. I don't know much about skeet throwing things, except for the fact that typically one or two of these feet are usually busted off of these things. So to find one with all 3 feet of them, 3 feet, is pretty rare. It's got a lot of springs, a lot of different little pieces, a little pulley down here that's going to redirect the pulling string here, and some really neat castings. So I think this is going to clean up really nice. I think this is probably going to be a real wall hanger, but anyway, it's really cool looking, and I'm excited to get started on it. So let me get going. So here I've got the Remington skeet thrower, whatever, I'll figure out the name later, sporting clay thrower. I've got it all disassembled, as much as I want it to be disassembled. And the reason I say that is, when you've got a larger project like this, and this is for me, I mean, everybody's got their own method and whatnot, but what I do is I prefer to leave, things into sort of base categories or base component pieces. And I will later on get in there and break this down further. However, the initial cleaning of this, I can media blast it, get it relatively cleaned, freed up, all that other stuff, and everything's going to stay contained together because it's bolted together. As opposed to, if I tried to disassemble this all now, one, I would be trying to remove these nuts past the rust that's on here, and that's a good recipe for stripping bolts out. And then it just gives me a lot more little components that are prone to getting lost. And so this is a way for me to control my losses on that front. But what I've got here, and I can't say that I've cleaned up too many springs in the Media Blaster, this would probably be like the ideal candidate for the Evapo Rust. I don't have any Evapo Rust. I probably should get some, but I just don't want another bucket of stuff laying around my shop. Somebody commented on my last video, they said, "Good job, but your shop's a nightmare." They're exactly right. That's a pretty good diagnosis. It is sort of a nightmare. It's a small shop, and I've got a lot of stuff. And, I just sort of... Anyway, whatever. But a bucket of Evapo Rust would probably work well on something like this. However, I don't have that, so I'm just going to media blast this and then wire wheel it. And that's going to be probably the extent of that. If for some reason I think I need to go out and buy some Evapo Rust, I will. But I think that I'll be more than capable of cleaning this up quite nicely with the media blaster, the wire wheel, and some elbow grease. So with that being said, I'm going to keep the media blasting down to a dull roar, as they say, and just maybe get a little clip of me media blasting the base of this or something, and maybe some random shots of me wire wheeling stuff. But you guys have been through this channel long enough to see what I do for this stuff, but I don't want to leave out the new people. So there'll be a couple minutes of time lapse here and there, and I'll just try to keep everything on the table and just keep plugging through this and try to keep these videos a little bit shorter. The last video was over a half-hour long, and I think that probably starts to wear on people. So it's probably because I talk too much. But anyway, so. With that being said, I'm going to get to work now and bring you over and show you a little bit of media blasting on this base. See how that comes out. So one of the fun things about doing a restoration project like this is just the thought process, the imagination that goes along with you know, how should I finish this, or what treatment should I give that? And when you're cleaning up the small pieces, it sort of gives you time to ruminate, time to think about what you're going to do. And the bad thing about it is that you end up with projects that sometimes it sounds like a good idea, but then you do it and then you hate it. For example, this has been on my workbench because I want to change this green. I hate it. It sounded like a good idea at first, but so anyway, like I think it was Yogi Berra said. He said, the first thing you got to do is make a plan. Second thing you got to do is stick to it. The third thing you got to do is, you know, if that plan's not working, change it, and then stick to that plan. And there's a lot of that going on here. I'm sure I muddied up that saying, but you know, you get the point. So this is the media blasted base. And, you know, it's humidity down here, you can actively see this thing start changing color quickly. So I'm going to take this out and get some paint on it, and sooner rather than later. But I wanted to show you that is media blasting. This is just wire wheel, and then the nylon, that fiber wheel that I always talk about, the UXCell, UXCELL, on Amazon. It's like a $10 wheel. I have two different sizes. But anyway, I did the fiber wheel, and this is what that nut looked like before, and you can see what it looks like now. So it does a pretty good job. I also took a rusted bolt, same treatment, wire wheel, and then the fiber wheel, and that looks pretty nice on there. These things might, I don't do a lot of bluing, but it might be the appropriate use of this. Actually, this gets hidden underneath it, so I'll have to think about that. But what I'm going to do now is continue to clean this thing up, and I might get the occasional shot of me wire wheeling stuff just to show that I did some work on this. But again, I don't want to bore you to death with all the little pieces, so I'm just going to keep working and sort of bring you back when I have this a little bit further along. But so far, I think with the time lapse of me cleaning this and the media blasting, you've got an idea of the processes that I'm using. So let me get to it. All right, I got some paint on the base going on out there, and then this, you know, sort of reminds me of a wrench handle. The way it's, I mean, it's completely different. But anyway, in terms of being able to smooth this out and polish it, I'm pretty sure I can do that. So I think I might try that on this one. Alright, I got that media blasted. Now I'm going to take it over to the Kalamazoo, and we'll get some time lapse of me trying to polish this up a little bit. What I think I have is sometimes I have an innate ability to pick up stuff that I don't need, absolutely do not need, and find a use for it. I was in Tractor Supply the other day, and they had this, you know, $3, usually $7 thing of steel pins. And I said, you know, I mean, I've had occasions to make pins and stuff before, but they had a couple different sizes. So I bought a couple different sizes, thinking, you know, even if I have to use it one time, it's going to be worth the $3. And the time lapse you just saw had me removing this bolt, and look at that, it's the exact same size. So I'll have to fabric hobble something to pound that out later on. But anyway, what that does is that allowed me to grind off the rivet, and I'll be able to remove the shaft. Should be able to remove this shaft. And anyway, that'll be really nice. I do not have the rivet for this part, but I think I might be able to work around that. And I'm not going to go through the motions to try to grind all that off, because I think it's going to cause more headache than anything. So, but I do want this shaft to be a different color. I want it to be nice and shiny, and the rest of this painted. So anyway, I think that's going to work out nicely. Alright, so that's that pin cleaned up now. That fiber wheel does a real nice job with that, and then I hit it with the buffer just for long enough to where it got too hot to hold on to. Now, one of the interesting things about this trap is that it's remarkably, I mean, these are super complex castings. And somebody took a lot of time to cast this and go through all the motions and whatnot. And you know, I've never cast anything myself, so you know, I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here. But I can't help but believe that at some point this got away from the craftsman and got into the hands of the finance guys, the bean counters. And there's just some fit and finish things that, you know, could have been better taken care of. The grind marks and stuff on here. I'm going to clean this up a little bit with the die grinder and just sort of, you know, add a little bit to the fit and finish, because some of this is remarkably rough, and that's just all places for this thing to corrode later on. Some of these are just egregious, but I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time hogging this whole thing out. But anyway, I tried to do a little bit to help make this look a little nicer. Alright, so disregard the mess. Most of you probably learned to do that if you're still watching. I've got the pieces cleaned up. All the nuts and bolts and everything are all rust-free and, you know, relatively decent. And, you know, this all happened without evapor rust or anything. This was just, you know, it did take a media blaster or a wire wheel. It all could have been done with a wire wheel, every last bit of it. So now I've got to paint this, so I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm going to time lapse it and we'll see what it looks like at the end. Alright, so this is midway through the restoration of this Remington Expert Trap. At this point in time, I think each individual piece is pretty good looking. I'm happy with the way that these things have come to be as individual pieces, but once things comes together, sometimes things change and my, you know, it sort of presents new information. And right now I've sort of just made some assumptions about what pieces I should paint, what pieces I should leave unfinished, and I'm going to go ahead and assemble this, sort of reassess what I've done, and just give you a little bit of an explanation of the project, what I liked, what I didn't like at the end of this. So anyway, this is going to be time-lapse, so me assembling it. Hopefully I can get some good shots of that. Alright, so I had to file fit this pin to go in here, the new rivet. These are pretty hard. I'm pretty confident that if I go smashing on this thing, I don't think I'll be able to smash it down enough without, you know, really playing with fire, so to speak. So I did manage to find this tiny little, hands are too dirty to see that, this tiny little clip. I think I'm going to try to drill a hole in there and then use this clip to retain it. And that'll do two things. One is it'll make my life easier and not stressing me out about snapping this thing off. And two, if somebody ever wants to disassemble this to clean it, if you drop this thing in the dirt or something, this looks like a piece that you might want to access from time to time. So I think that might be an improvement on the design. That's a rationalization in case you haven't heard one in a while. Anyway, see how that works out. Alright, so this is really scary right now. I'm hoping that I got this thing assembled right. By the gap in that spring, you can tell that this puppy's loaded. Or sprung anyway. So it is back together, ready to go. You guys are going to yell at me in the comments, and rightly so, because I'm not going to test fire this thing. I do not have any clay pigeons. I don't have the skeet things. The Walmart around here doesn't sell it. The Dick's Sporting Goods down here doesn't sell gun stuff anymore. I live relatively close to the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School, where back in 2017 that maniac went out and killed all those kids. You know, it's just such a sad and tragic thing. And one of the knee-jerk things they did is they went and pulled all the guns and everything from around here. And, you know, you can be on either side of the argument, and you know, this isn't a political channel or anything like that, but anyway, they didn't know what to do because it's such a tragic set of events there, and you know, the fallout for that is, you know, people just don't want to be culpable or have any part of any horrible events like that. So anyway, rightly or wrongly, they don't sell a lot of gun stuff down here, at least in my proximity. I'd have to drive 20 or 30 miles, and once you get up towards Okeechobee, then it's more of a rural crowd, and you know, there's a lot of hunting and fishing, and you know, there's some pretty good sporting goods stores up there at you know, Bass Pro Shops. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can still buy guns and ammo in places down here, but that really did put a shock on, you know, the stuff in the immediate area. Anyway, all that aside, so sorry for the Blair Witch. Let me get this thing on a tripod. All right, hopefully that's a little bit better. So I went through and I used the Rust-Oleum paint, sandblasted it, media blasted it, and then came through with the paint pens. I'm super happy with the paint pens. I'm just using the Sharpie brand stuff. I've got the fatter Sharpies. Pardon me. And then I was at Michael's and bought a whole pile of other paint pens. Very happy with that. The paint brushes and Testors paint, they definitely have a place in the shop. However, when it comes to lettering, with shaky hands like mine, the paint pen is far superior, and you don't have to clean anything up afterwards. Because I don't really clean paint brushes. I just throw them away when I'm done. You know, it's what I do. So, anyway, that cleaned up pretty good. The top here, this has all just been soaked in the bow shield. And I mentioned earlier that this arm here, again, I got to be sort of careful with this. I don't want to get popped in the teeth. This arm here has been coated with the clear enamel Rust-Oleum. I'm hoping that holds up all right. And again, I just painted the red, like the working parts, the pulley down there, and then this part here. You know, those are from a distance to see if your rope is hung up. I figured it'd be good to have a color that stands out a little bit. This should be put on a base and should be really secure on that base. Otherwise, you're prone to snapping the feet off on these. And I'm not going to dry fire this. I watched some videos online of people firing these things. First off, it's not very spectacular. And two, with most things, it's not good to dry fire them, whether it be, you know, an arrow, bow and arrow, or something like that, or bow for that matter. Crossbow, a gun. There's some myths about that, but anyway, you don't want to dry fire stuff if you don't have to, and I'm not going to do it to here because I feel that the kinetic energy, if it doesn't have some sort of a load here, it might overspring this arm and snap something. Again, this is probably going to be just a wall hanger, so I'm not going to tempt fate. I'm also not going to tie a string to it right now because this is slightly wet. I just painted it, and I want to get this video out today. And I think that if there are any problems with this, I would suspect that the problems in the future would be that because I painted the springs with the bow shield, and I coated every bolt in this thing with the bow shield, that if somebody were to come over and try to clear shellac this, so use the clear paint and just clear coat the whole thing, that there would be some adhesion issues because, you know, it wouldn't be sticking to the metal, it would be sticking to this surface protectant on there. So that these pieces that are just bare metal, I'm hoping that they should be okay. But, you know, only time will tell. And I thought that, you know, in the event that this actually does get used, a clear coat enamel wouldn't be good on any working parts like the spring because I don't think it's got the elasticity Again, a lot of conjecture on my part. However, you know, I do what seems right in my mind. And so anyway, it's got a couple different means of adjustment here. Let's see if I can. Again, I got to be careful with this thing. I'm going to unspring it here in a second. There's a wing nut in the back that's going to give you more tension here. There's a nut here for tension. There's a knurled knob here. I guess that's going to hold onto your clay and adjust at the point of release, whether it spits it out here or whether it spits it out halfway through or at the end of the swing. There's also this handle in the back, and because this isn't bolted down, well, alright. So anyway, you can see that this traverses across the back here, and try to the little pin. Let's see if I can get you down here. The pin that I had drilled out before, sorry, it was a full-on rivet that was in there, and I was really reluctant to go pounding on that because these apparently take a special tool. Oh, I'm gonna have to zoom out. So these rivets that I have would take a special rivet setting bit that goes in the end of an air chisel, and then that would crush these down. And because this is cast, I'd be very reluctant to start pounding on this, because if any of that force got imparted into the cast section here, undoubtedly it would just shear it off. So I chose to put this pin in there, and I think that's a solid fix. I also sort of deviated from the original plans in the sense that here, alright, let me unload this. Alright, to unload this, before I do it, this spring, the rope is going to go from this mechanism down to the pulley and then to the shooter, or to whoever triggers this thing off. I did see another variation where they had a bigger pulley that came out here, but it just looked like, you know, something that was just asking to get broke off. So anyway, this seems to be the more common adapter here, with just a pulley on the bottom and a rope that goes through and back. That's how this is operated, but it just pulls this lever, and you can see that hopefully you can see there's a spring right there. I'll show you here in a second, but hopefully you can see this. So I'm gonna pull this back, drop this lever, and now I got a pretty substantial amount of force, because this is for size sake. I mean, you can see that this is probably, you know, akin to a garage door spring, probably shorter, but you know, a pretty good strength spring. And the mechanism here is spring loaded, and it's got a real positive snap action too. So, oops. The other mechanism, what you can see here, is that this is the sort of trajectory, if you will, and this hoop right here is what controls that radius. And then there's a square nut on the side here. I think this would have been nicer if it was a wing nut, personally, but and then here, these are all sprung, these nuts, and that's going to control the amount of tension that's on this, whether it tends to drift up and down as you shoot or whatnot. But anyway, this is my brother's. I'm going to give it back to him, and you know, he's a shooter, so not a skeet shooter or anything like that, but he's a gun guy, and I think hopefully he'll like this, and it'd be fun to go skeet shooting someday. Again, South Florida isn't really the place for that. It's too packed. But anyway, what I guess I'm going to do now is, for transportation purposes, for shipping this thing, shipping it, for putting it in the truck and bringing it with me, I'm going to just put a piece of 550 cord there, and then this will come back and snap into place, and I can put a little bit of tension on it here with this nut, and then that's going to allow this thing to sort of use its own attributes, its own mechanism. It's going to hold this arm in place. It's going to keep this spring from falling out, and keep it pretty safe for shipping, so it fits in the back of the pickup truck. Anyway, so that's my brother's Remington Expert Trap thrower. I hope you like this episode. The next project is sort of unknown at this juncture in time, but anyway, I'd just like to thank everybody again for all the support, the comments, and you know, I hope you have a good weekend.